Project Curly update. I finally got the racks installed, and we're going to take a look how that went, what I think so far, and some of the details. All right, stick around if it interests you, because I've been spinning wrenches. Now, it wasn't that long ago that I decided to take an unloved and unused mountain bike hardtail that had been hanging around in my garage from the old days and convert it into a drop bar bike for bike packing. But the problem was it had no braze-on mounts. It had no way to really mount a rack, and while I could have used all soft bags, which is a way to do it, I was interested in the idea of racks and panniers and dry bags, because I think that seems to be really the direction that a lot of the bike packing folks are going, especially for longer trips. You know, the Great Divide mountain bike route and some of the more lengthy trips where you need to carry a little bit more, you're not necessarily racing. So I thought, how can I put racks and bags like that on Project Curly? Well, Old Man Mountain to the rescue, because Old Man Mountain has their axle system that allows you to mount racks to either a QR or a through axle, right, on just about any bike. And that's what I did on Project Curly, and we're going to take you through how that process was and then take a look at the results. Okay, here we go. Now, to begin with, you need to be able to identify your axles that you have. Now, in this case, this bike is through axles front and rear. And that's a key part of this equation. It's fairly simple for you to pull your through axle out. Old Man Mountain, which is part of Robert Axle Project, which makes a plethora, if you love that word, of axles out there, just about an axle for almost everything. And not just for like bike packing conversions. If you need a through axle because you've damaged yours, you've lost yours, you want to upgrade yours, maybe you want to get rid of the little lever part, you just want to, you know, the wrench type because it looks nicer, they got all that kind of stuff. And they have a huge database where you can look up the axle that fits your bike. You can measure your own, because there's going to be different thread pitches, there's going to be different lengths. You know, there is no one axle standard that is the same across all bikes, because remember, oh my goodness, this is the bicycle industry, the inventor of about 1,000 bottom bracket standards. So you kind of need to know what you got, and then they can send you the right axle kit for your bike. Once you do that, you get your axle kits, and they come in these little boxes you can see nicely packed. They have a little scan thing where you can scan with your camera. You know how you do it, like restaurant menus, etc. And that'll take you to installation instructions, and it's really fairly straightforward. They'll have little bits of hardware in there. The bags are numbered, and basically from there you just remove your old axle, you install their axle, and use the hardware bits as called out in the instructions. Sometimes I found the instructions to be slightly lacking. It'll mention something like you may need to use the included spacers, but it doesn't really say under what circumstances and how to use the spacers. You got 4 spacers in your hand of varied widths. What am I supposed to do with them? But I'll tell you what, in their defense, writing instructions like that or doing videos like that is really, it's much more challenging than you think it is, because, you know, when you're talking, you assume that everybody knows what you know. It's like saying, hey, you need to know how to get to this town. Well, go down to Uncle Bob's house and turn left. Of course, you know where Uncle Bob's house is, but, you know, they don't. Anyway, so I found their instructions actually be pretty good, but sometimes they left me a little bit scratching my head, or my cheek in this case. And once you have your axles in, you can take the hardware, you can mount your rack to it. Now, this is the Divide rack. They make the Elkhorn rack, which is more of a 3-pack mount kind of rack. They also make the Divide rack. And the Divide rack, which is what I have on here, that's a pannier rack with a little deck on top. And I thought panniers would be something worth trying. And we're going to take a look at these panniers in a second, because they're quite nice. Fitting the little pucks to your frame is very simple. The pucks is where the upper support of the rack mounts to. That's very simple. They make some, they give you some protective clear like plastic, not plastic, you know, like vinyl tape, like the shelter tape that you can put on your frame, and that protects it from any marring. If it's a carbon frame, it's a good idea. So you're not scratching into the carbon in any way, although a zip tie, you know, is going to be pretty harmless. It comes with some industrial strength zip ties that are UV stable and don't ratchet, so you can get them pretty nice and tight. They're very heavy duty. They give you extra plasticky wrap pieces in case you need to do that again or you mess up, and extra zip ties. Then once you mount the pucks to your frame, which is easily done with the instructions, you put the supports to it and you screw it all down with the hardware. Actually, very straightforward process. Now on the front's a little bit different because I'm not mounting a rack on the front, although I could actually, even with a suspension fork with their kit. But no, I decided to use their axle pack system, which basically gives me a 3-pack mount on the front of the bike with pretty much on any fork. It can be a carbon fork like I'd have on my cyclosis gravel bike. In this case, it's a full suspension fork. And you can configure the axle pack to work across quite a bit different types of forks. They included hardware spacers. Again, we've got the little pucks and the little wrap tape. And that isn't really, you know, probably really don't need that on a suspension fork because I'm not going to hurt it with a plastic zip tie. But I think it also maybe helps the puck stay in place, just thinking. Anyway, we put all that on there. And as you can see, I have a couple king cages that, like an anything cage in titanium. I originally got those thinking I'd be using this like on my Turner cyclosis at some point. And I still might. But for now, that's what I've gone on here. Let's take a look at the panniers. These panniers are really quite nice. They seem extremely well made. They attach to the back of the rack with some very heavy-duty Velcro straps. They're all compressible and adjustable. You can see here I've got one expanded and I've got one still collapsed, and so anywhere in between would work just fine. There's no really metal hardware on that's going to, you know, bracket's going to rattle or bend or anything. It seems like they are made very well. Very stout fabric to them, and it's kind of a roll top closure. Quite nice, and they're pretty darn roomy. I can't imagine hurting these things. So that looks very good. And I would say too that everything I've touched on this, all the hardware, the racks, the axle pack, looks like they're made very well. Quite a bit of thought went in. The construction looks absolutely bomber on this. Now you can see I also have the frame mounted bag in there, and I upped my hydration a little bit. I added another mountain feed bag. I think that's what they call those, from Revelate. So I've got one on each side of the stem, not just for water, but also you can put snacks in there. I can put a little camera in there with a little tripod, you know, that'll fit in there. Really quite handy. And you notice underneath the frame, this doesn't have a third water bottle mount. That's going to be kind of handy. And so Fidlock, if you've ever experienced Fidlock, they have those magnetic clasp system, if you will. So you have a Fidlock water bottle, it'll clack onto your carrier, and then you twist them to unlock them. It's not necessarily a cage, it's a dedicated little magnetic attachment with a dedicated bottle. They make 2 different sizes bottle. Well, they also make an attachable mount with some heavy-duty straps, kind of like the Volet straps, kind of rubber. And I added one of those on the down tube, you can see here, and that'll give me quite a bit of extra water capacity. And that's kind of nice because where I live, it's typical to need to carry a lot of water. There isn't a lot of water sources necessarily. Most of the places I'll be taking that. So what else? I also have, you know, I can expand my capacity. For instance, I have some little top tube bags like this. I got a selection of these things I can put on there if I want to. I've also got some different bar bags. This is one from Astral. It's a, you know, if I need a little bit of extra something going on up front for carry, maybe food, snacks, camera gear, that kind of stuff. And I also, if I really need a lot of capacity, I do have a big roll top bag, a big burrito bag that would sit on the handlebars and roll close. So I could up the capacity of this bike pretty far. And on this deck here, on the back of this rack, I'll probably put a dry bag on there that'll carry probably my sleep system. That's the goal. We'll see. I haven't tried to pack this all yet, but I think that's a good place for that. And Old Man Mountain actually makes a very nice trunk bag, if you will, and maybe that that might be even better than using a dry bag. Thing that's nice about a dry bag with volet straps though, if that's your sleep system and you're setting your tent up a little ways, or it's in your clothes, you want to go take your clothes to like change or shower, you just take the whole thing with you. Where if it's in a saddle bag, well, these saddle bags, we'll get to that in a minute, they don't come off very easily. So sometimes having some of the things on a bag that you can just take and go, whether it's strapped to your handlebar or on a rack, that's not a bad idea. So those are the positives. I was able to put racks and panniers. I was able to put something on my front fork. I expanded the capacity of this bike by a great deal. And I did it on a bike that was never designed to have a rack on it. And it is pretty impressive, the mounting system. I can't imagine it going anywhere. Are there any downsides to this? Well, I haven't used it yet, but just thinking ahead and through the installation process, I think there potentially are. They're not bad things, but they're something to think about. One of the first things is weight. Well, if you're using all soft bags, if you're using just these soft bags like this everywhere, you know, the big saddle seat bags that come way out here, I got one of those too, and you're using soft bags, they weigh a lot less than a rack and pannier system does. So yes, there's certainly weight involved in this. And if you're traveling light, if you're a small person, you want to move fast, well, racks like this probably aren't the best choice. However, most of the time I figure I'm not going to be trying to go all that fast. So I think the advantages will outweigh the disadvantages. But if I was just going to go out for a quick overnighter, I think, and I needed minimal gear, well, I think I would probably remove the rack and just use a quick bag system. I think that still makes a lot of sense. Now, here's the other thing. I just changed my through axle and I attached a rack right to the ends of it, which means if I've got to remove my wheel and tire combination to change a flat or to do any kind of mechanical work like that, I got to unbolt all of that, right? I've got to unbolt the rack from the ends of the axles. I've got to remove the cap on the end of the axle, and then I got to remove the axle. And then in the meantime, I got to figure out what my rack and my bags, which are all weighed down, are doing to complicate me putting my wheel and my tire in and out. So there is that. And how often that happens to you, it might be a consideration for this system, which of course, if I had braze-ons, if I had attachment points on the frame, well, my rack would just be mounted to the frame and we wouldn't be doing this. So it's not a fault of the rack in this case. The complication is I don't have rack mounts. So something to think about there. And kind of the same goes for the front, although it's not as involved because I don't have the weight of a rack and bags. But the front axle's the same way. I would have to remove the axle pack mounting, kind of swing them out of the way a little bit, and then remove my front. So not near as complicated as the rear would be in order to work on your bike. Another potentially negative thing that I noticed with the panniers, and it depends upon how you want to use these, whether you'd like this or not, they're not very easy to remove from the rack. So if you think you're going to pull up to your Airbnb when you're out touring and you're just going to grab your saddlebags all ready to go, all packed, and just pull them off your bike and take them in, well, you can, but it is not easy. You got to reach back and behind the rack between the wheel and undo some very, very strong Velcro straps that are kind of wrapped around your rack, and I wouldn't want to do that. That would be a lot of fiddling. So I think you almost need to consider that these saddlebags are on there for the duration of the trip, unless you want to really, really mess with it. One option probably would be to pack inside these inside a lightweight dry, not really a dry bag, like a stuff sack or something like that. And then you could just basically reach in and pull it out. And I think that's the way that I would do it if I was going to be thinking I would be not camping right next to my bike. Does that make sense? So that is about it for now. It's like I said, it's still, summer here in Southern California. It's pretty crushing. And I've got some gravel trips coming up. I'm just getting ready to get out of town for the next 2 weeks or so, do some gravel events up in the Sierras and even further than that away from home. So I won't be working on this anymore for a little while. But when I get back, hopefully we get into October, the temperatures will start rolling over a little bit and we can get out and do some trips on this, because I think it's going to work out great. I got to figure out next like how I'm going to pack the thing. I got to figure out the bag for the back of the trunk here, and I got to get some figure out some bags for my anything cages, or whatever I'm going to put in the front there. I'm thinking maybe extra water, or maybe my part of my sleeping kit, maybe like my inflatable pad and things like that. I don't know. We'll see. I got to figure all that. It's going to be a game of Tetris for sure, and see what I want to carry, my little kitchen stuff. And I would say right now I've got more storage capacity on this bike than I've ever had on any bike packing bag I've used. And that is pretty cool. But here's the problem too. If you have room to pack something, that means you're going to take it with you. And sometimes that means you end up with a very heavy bike. So I gotta show a little bit of control, you know what I'm saying? All right, hey, shout out to Old Man Mountain and Robert Axle Project for providing the racks, the bags, the hardware, the front axle pack, all that at no charge to me for the purposes of this build. I very, very much appreciate your support. I'm not obligated to say nice things about it, but I think so far I've been very, very impressed with the system, despite the slight drawbacks you're going to have when you're basically in a compromised situation with a bike that was never designed to have a rack. They're allowing me to put a rack on there, and that is actually very, very cool. And I'll take the compromises to gain the benefits, huh? All right, that's it for now, guys. Until it cools down a little bit, it gives me a little bit of time still to figure out how to pack this thing. I'll be getting all my stuff out. Then we'll take a look at some of the other parts of the bike. I think I'm going to make a tire and wheel change. I think I'm going to go to 29er tires as an option as well. And I'm getting that set up now. I'm not quite ready for that yet. WTB sent me some 2.4 Ranger tires. I'm just trying to figure out what wheels to use with it. Once I get that sorted, well, we'll get rolling, huh? All right, you guys have a great week and or weekend. And as always, you go ride your bikes.